What I'm going to share with you today is something that really changed the game for me and really helped money start to flow into my business instead of always feeling like I was in the hustle phase. So if you feel like you're in that hustle phase or you want to let money flow more easily to you, then listen up, because that is exactly what we're going to cover today. Because we're going to be looking at the moon cycle. Surprise, surprise, an astrologer talking about the moon. So we're going to be looking at the moon cycle and how you can use that to structure your month so that you're not always switched on and you're not always stuck in rest. You've got that nice balance between the two, because that's what the moon sets you up to do. Now, the moon cycle is 29 and a half days. So unless it's February, it's usually a full month. The moon also spends 2.5 days in every sign. So what does that mean? That means that there's different vibes throughout the month as well. The moon in Gemini is fun, is more wanting to talk about your emotions, maybe getting curious about what they mean, that sort of a thing. Whereas the moon in Capricorn is a little bit more shut off, a little bit more cool and collected. So there's different vibes throughout the month as well. And it's in each sign for roughly 2.5 days. But today, I don't want to go into too much about the signs. I want to go more into the phases, because this really gives you that structure that you can have in your business so that you're not getting stuck in the hustle, or you're not getting stuck in too flowy, right? There's that nice balance between the two, because you need to take aligned action and you need time to be as well. I'll also mention the signs for April, May, where the moon will be at each phase, but give or take, because I haven't went through and looked at a chart to come up with these signs. I only know for certain the new moon is in Taurus and the full moon is in Scorpio. But the rest, I'm kind of just guessing of where that should be around this time. So don't take them as gospel. But I will give you that as a little bit of forward planning and to talk about the vibe that you might feel around that time as well. But I don't want to go too much into the signs. Okay, so the first phase we have is the new moon. This is when the sky is dark. At this point, the sun is in front of the moon and the moon's light is not getting to Earth. So it's the new moon at this point. And this is where it's a good time to have your visionary hat on and think more of, what do I want to set out into the world around this time? If you were a gardener, this is when you would be planting your seeds. Yeah, because you're putting them into the dark depths of the soil. And this is what you're doing with your goals and that around this time, around the new moon. You're setting those intentions and the things that you want to sprout over the next cycle. They obviously sometimes take longer than a month, but you're starting to plant the seeds here. You're starting to have that vision. This is a good time to manifest. This is what I want in my life for this month. This is the intention I set for this month. That is what the new moon is good for. It's not a time for like getting into the hustle and putting the structures and all that in place for these things. This is still a good time, still dark, to lay low and just let that creativity out. Let the imagination run a little bit and start to set the intentions of what you are wanting for this next moon cycle. For example, the Taurus moon cycle runs from April all the way to 6 months later, and then 6 months to the next new moon, right? So you can think about it like that. But every month there is a new moon, and every month there is a full moon. So the new moon is in Taurus. The next month it will be in Gemini. The next month it will be in Cancer, and so on. The full moon is in Scorpio. The next month it will be in Sagittarius, and so on. Like I said, this new moon is in Taurus. So that's like abundance, sensuality, materialistic. Taurus are very slow and steady, but they're very consistent. In fact, with a Taurus, they're very, very resistant to change. They don't want to do things that could rock the boat because they like things just to be. They like things just as they are. So in this moon cycle, I would definitely be looking at it with this vibe, because the sun is going to be there for the full cycle. So, well, give or take again. So think about how you can maybe be more slow, more steady. When you're setting your intentions, light the candle, get the chocolate, get the blanket, get the ice cream, whatever it is for you, but do that sort of stuff around this time as well and really get into the feeling of things. Like I said, Taurus is all about sensuality. So think about that around this new moon. Now, I'm going to do a video probably on Taurus season. So I'll go in the new moon in Taurus. So I probably will go into a little bit more depth in that video on what this is. But the new moon is your blank slate. That's where you're like, right, it's a new season and we're going to set intentions and do all that stuff. As the sun starts to move, we start to get a crescent moon. And this is a little bit of light. Okay, so this is where you're starting to maybe just peak a little bit more energy. You're maybe just dipping your toes in at this stage. You're testing the waters. You're starting to feel things out. Yeah? You're not rushing into anything. We're starting to feel things out. Maybe breaking things down into chunks at this point, just to see how things could look, to see how we could do things going forward. Each of these moon phases lasts about 3.5 days. So 2 moon phases is roughly about a week. So that's the waxing crescent. And I would say that the new moon, the waxing crescent, and the waning crescent, they're all kind of behind the scenes type. These are good times for not having the hustle and go mentality. More about just like laying low, just dipping your toes a little bit in, and that sort of a thing. As we get to the first quarter, this is where we're starting to pick up a little bit of momentum. But we can start to feel resistance around this time. This is maybe where we're not sure. These sort of stuff, we maybe start to get a little bit more logical at this time. But you really want to be starting to push things now. And I'm not saying we get right stuck in that masculine. Absolutely not. What I'm saying is we've got that nice balance between the two, but we are more anything that all the actions that we've thought about and that we've planned and that we've got a structure for are now starting to take shape. We're now starting to tease things. So if you think about this, if you were launching a new offer, around this time is when you're going to be starting your promotion of it. This is where you're going to go full pell on your promotion. You're starting to increase the stuff you're doing around this time. And again, I think around this time it'll be in Cancer or Leo. So that's like a nurturing. I like to think about Cancer as the mother bear energy. Leo is more of the main character vibe. So you're kind of coming from mother to main character throughout this period. So you might have that little tug of war between the two. But again, take this bit with a pinch of salt. We know the new moons in Taurus, we know the full moons in Scorpio, but I've not went through a chart to see exactly where these phases fall, what sign. After the first quarter, so you can imagine that now the moon's starting to become more visible. You're starting to see it more easily. We'll come to the waxing gibbous. So this is the waxing, so it's before the full moon. And this is all about all the things that we learned so far from our planning, from our starting to push it out, from our starting to talk, to be more visible. We're starting to get feedback. We're starting to be able to polish things. We're starting to be able to fine tune things and really get the feel for things. This is, again, we're all building momentum now. We're starting to pick up speed, ready for that full moon, which is the next phase. And like I said, the next one is in the full moon in Scorpio. Scorpio is about getting into the darkest depths of your emotions and really clearing out all that stuff, really having that purge of your emotions. When it gets to the full moon, this is the peak. Again, if we were going from a launch phase, then the full moon is sort of when you would be wanting to, maybe you would have your master class or your, you would be closing the cart around the full moon. Yeah, that's like the peak, the crescendo of everything. And it's this, during this time, the activities you want to be doing are like, things might come to light at this time. Cracks in the process that you missed, that you need to refine, they might be evident at this time, or things that you've done thinking they were the best things to do might not have been the best things to do, and it's time to like pivot. Yeah, these are the things you might start to get around this time for you towards your business. Mentally and emotionally, you might be like, right, doing this is no longer serving me. That this is time where I need to actually be like, do you know what? Fuck this. I'm not doing this anymore. Get rid of that. And that's it. Like, I know for me around the last full moon, it was all about me people pleasing and where I was giving away my power. And for you, that was it in Libra. So in Scorpio now, it's like, right, we've done that. We've identified it. We can see it, and it's now letting it go. So it's now more like putting strict boundaries in place for me. So that is what the full moon is for. But then this continues because we get into the waning gibbous. So now the full moon's where the moon is illuminated, and then it sort of goes, the sun starts to move away. Yeah. So then it starts to lose its light again because the moon reflects the sun. So as it starts to move away, it comes to the waning gibbous. Yeah. So it's still quite visible at this time. And this is where you should still be quite visible in your business. And this is where you're going to be, you've just had that peak, that crescendo where all the clients are now with you. This is the time where you want to serve them. You want to teach them. You want to reflect on what's working and what's not. And I say that more from a client point of view now. Like, if we want to retain these clients, what's working, what's not. If we want to keep this up, what's working, what's not. The full moon is more about what's not serving you at all. This is now like, right, what's not serving us when it comes to our clients. What could we refine? Doing that reflection around this time. And it's all the stuff that you learn from the full moon and the other phases. This is time where you're going to integrate and share it. So this is the time where you're like, right, I've decided I'm going to put this boundary down. This is when you're going to start to focus on that boundary, start to build it into a habit, so that by the time you get to the next new moon, you're in a better place for going forward. After that comes the last quarter. So this is the moon starting to disappear now. Yeah, we're only got a quarter moon again, but on the other side. And this is, again, get rid of it. This is your last chance before it gets dark again. This is your last chance before you rest. You have to get rid of everything. This is the peak, if you like, of action, because you're like, push, push, push. Now, like I said, if you're looking about it throughout the full cycle, there's about 4 weeks. So it's about 28 days, 7 days in each. So for the first 2 weeks, you're more building momentum. For the last 2 weeks, you're more getting shit done and starting to slow down. So the first 2 weeks is build up. The second 2 weeks is slow down. That's a good way to think about it. Yeah, because you start with the more visionary and all that stuff. Anyway, I'll digress. And then that is the last quarter is all about getting rid of everything, cut the cords, declutter. This is like your sort of spring cleaning phase before you get into the next moon cycle. And then the last phase, the waning crescent. And this is cocoon energy. Rest, relax, recover, really getting into your feels, being in that feminine energy. This is a lot of time, like doing the relaxing creativity, relaxing, being more sensual. And I think it'll be around Aquarius or Pisces around this time. So that's really, the Pisces is really creative. So doing like your arts and your crafts sort of stuff around this time is going to be good for you. Just feeling the sensuality of everything, being imaginative, letting your imagination run wild. Pisces is the dreamer. So, but doing this in with rest and relax and feeling like a cocoon, and like you like get the blankets out, ice cream, Netflix. This is that time. And I'll also say, like, if you are a female that is still having cycles, then I would say that a lot of people like to sort of tune their cycles to the moon. I can't speak from experience with this one. I do have a daughter, and she is totally in sync with the moon. So I know when I'm gonna have a rough week. But the new moon is kind of where you want to be bleeding, and the full moon is where you would be wanting to ovulate. Now, obviously, I don't know how this works in feminine terms, right? How you do it. Stare at the moon, do moon gaze, do all that stuff. Just try and, if you can line up with that, then it does make your business easier, because when you're bleeding and when you're needing that rest and recovery, it's at the same time as in the new moon and the sort of waning crescent. And then that more peak stuff where you've got the most energy when you're ovulating and stuff like that, you can do when you're more creative and all that around the full moon. So that's just a little bit of advice. Again, I'm not speaking from experience, but I do sort of see from my daughter when she's waning and when she's got more energy. And I know that her cycle does fall in the same as the moon. So, but again, personally, no experience. So take it with a pinch of salt. And it is really just a way of making sure you've got that balance. The first 2 weeks, the build up, where you're going from more feminine to masculine energy. The last 2 weeks is where you're going from that masculine to feminine energy. Yeah. Where you're starting to slow things down. And it gives you that balance throughout the month. And a lot of people, like when I talk about full moons, for example, I will say, right, so say, for example, the full moon in Scorpio, which is coming up, I'll say, right, we'll look back to when the new moon was which was around September 2024. What cycles have started between September 2024 and now, which is going to be May 2025. What cycle sort of started there? You can also look back from September 2024 to May 2024 and see what sort of themes were cropping up around there to see if any of the themes are similar. But this is more on a bigger picture sort of scale. But it's another bit of information that could really help you make that money flow to you, because you're starting to balance the energy and you're starting to actually be intentional about the way things are going, because the energy supports them intentions during a new moon, whereas the energy supports the peak, as the energy supports the crescendo sort of effect around the full moon. And the thing is, we go through our life so unconsciously a lot of the time, unless you're actually doing something like astrology so you can be self-empowered and stuff, or whatever personal development stuff or self-development stuff you do. But we go through this period where we're not aware. So when you are aware and you can be a little bit more intentional, you should do it. Yeah. The more you can be aware, the better life becomes for you. The better you can be in your business. You can start to really show that authentic self.